This is Front Row. The hashtag is Front Row, and the subject, what we're talking about, is moral decay. The question we've asked earlier is, who is to blame for the increased moral decay in our society? And of course, your comments are coming fast and furious. Allow me to read just a few before we engage with the panelists that we have as to who is to blame, because the buck has to stop somewhere, and it has got to begin somewhere and end somewhere. But there you go. We have Joseph, who says it is evident that our parenting skills are on a down low. We need to ensure that we spend more time with our children. Many parents have disregarded and left their responsibility of bringing up children to their teachers. We also had a system that was demolished or destroyed where our grandparents would take care of us during school holidays, whatever happened. Somebody also says, this is so true. I hope parents are taking notes, and I sure do hope that parents are taking notes. Now, let me start with you, Dr. Mutisya. And somebody, had tweeted earlier on one of my handles and was saying that this blame game has got to stop. And Dr. Siengo is, well, there's a network problem, but we'll get her back. Let me throw this to Simon Bevy. And somebody had said that the blame game has got to stop. So the buck has got to stop somewhere. The truth of the matter is somebody has to do something. Where does that buck stop?
Thank you, Mike. I think, as we say in law, that we apportion blame, on several parties. It's not just one party. Even if someone drives into your parked car, there'll still be some blame apportioned to them, to you for parking your car there. And so I would say the first line of defense is the parents, because as parents, we bring these children into our world. We have this primary responsibility of socialization, of training them, of showing them values, of modeling for them, and of working with them. So parents, that's where it begins. But it goes beyond that. Society generally is to blame, because the way politicians speak, the way teachers speak, and how they get involved with the children, the way others outside there model for our children. We are a society. What is allowed in the media space and what we see every day, and how we see, MCS behaving on our screens. There's blame apportioned to different institutions. So we all need to come together and say, how do we work together to solve this? Right. From politicians to institutions to teachers, but primarily to parents, who are the ones who interact with these children over and over again every day.
All right, Catherine, it looks like this responsibility obviously is becoming overwhelming for parents. And the reason I say this, we do know that in the African context, there is even a saying that a child does not belong to individuals, but belongs to the society. But we're living in an age and time where that is not the case, because don't you dare touch my child. Even a teacher cannot reprimand a child, despite the fact that they spend more time with them. And of course, we do know that there's an angle of abuse, but that's not what I'm concentrating on right now. But what role does society have in ensuring that we keep an eye on our children's behavior as a society? Uncle Sam is watching.
Indeed. I start from the platform that indeed parents are the foundation, then we move to society. Right. Because it starts at home, then we build up. So as a society, if my neighbor sees my children getting into trouble, well, they might not pick up a rod or withdraw certain privileges because they cannot withdraw them anyway. What do? They need to raise an alarm. And I think that is what is currently not happening. We've gone quiet. We've become permissive. We're allowing this conduct by us not saying a single thing. Reach out to that other parent, and that's at a very basic community level. Raise the concerns, create a community where this can be handled rightfully, so to speak. And if that is not there, then what do? We need to find angles where we can raise this. By the time somebody runs to the police station to take my child, what about my immediate neighbor? What was my immediate neighbor doing? And not raising an alarm that my son was seen crossing over a fence when he should have not been trespassing. So we start at the very basic level and we build up so that we create communities where children can know also that if they get away with murder, it is not just on the house. Even out there they can be seen. and cannot get away with it.
And that word you use, communities, do we still have communities? And the reason why I ask that is because, yes, we live in estates, yes, we have neighbors, but how do we interact with that community? Because what would bring a sense of community is how we interact. The fact that I feel my back is covered by my neighbor, not the kind of communities we have now where I literally do not know what goes in their house and I do not care.
We really have to create these relationships. There's no two ways about it. We have to know your neighbors, you have to interact with them, and then create common sets of values. Then you can have a trust base upon which they can come and tell you this is what is happening. When we don't talk to one another, we're really letting our fears and our prejudices get into the way. I'm not too sure what we're afraid of. I just want to know that my son is crossing that fence. Again, that example. So let's build those relationships so that we can have trust and help our children as a society.
All right. Bevi, how do we
Mike,
build?
Maybe
Go on.
I could give an example of the communities. I have been impressed by some of the estates that have called us and said, well, could we bring our parents together and we do a training? So we have done some trainings for some estates, and we are doing that right now for some parents. But they have come together, said, we want to read from the same script. We want to discuss what passes in our community. We want to understand if there's a party somewhere that our representatives are there and they ensure that things are working okay, and created those kind of communities. I think is a nyumba kumi kind of thing that we've got to get to a point where we realize if we don't, then we'll find our children going to neighboring houses and doing all of those things that were caught on camera. So I think it's the responsibility of communities in the estates to be able to say, let's come together, let's build this. And thankfully, even in the corporates, that's beginning to happen, where some corporates are getting training for their parents and saying, how can we work together and consult with each other so that we make sure we do this together.
Okay, and Dr. Mutisya, good to have you back. And we've concentrated a lot on the parent, which I guess is a good thing, but maybe we also need to highlight that we do have some spoilt brats, some children that just require a little bit more attention and a little bit more of the switch, the cane than ordinary. Or how do we handle that? You do have some children who are generally, for whatever reason, a little bit more difficult than others.
Yes. I wouldn't call them spoiled children. I would call them difficult children. The role of the parent cannot be replaced to guide the child. But on the other hand, when we have children who have difficulties and they are brought to us, we still have to work with the parent, train the parent, because they are the environment who spend more time with them, and we still have to guide them. And something very important that for children, love is spelled as time. So the more time you spend with a child and playing together, if it's an adolescent, play is different from when you're dealing with a 4-year-old, for example. An adolescent might want to jog, an adolescent might want to watch a movie with you, an adolescent might be excited to get to be involved in an exercise. So it's very important for parents to bond with their child and to learn how to enforce rules and how to set limits. We cannot take the parent away, because even for us, when the children come to us, we still have to work with the parent. For the teenagers, we now have to engage them. And that's why we say when we lose it before the age of 13, then now you have to work with the child and motivate them to behave well, because now they are listening to their peers more.
All right, and how would you suggest one bonds with these children? Because like the case I've brought forward of a child who might be a little bit different and difficult, as you call them, bonding with them may also be a challenge.
Yes, and that's why we said, for when you find that a child is difficult and probably you've been using a cane, you may want to change the way you've been disciplining this child. So a difficult child might do better with praise, what we call social affirmation, or you use a targeted reward system. So let's say you tell the child, I've discovered you have a problem with getting up to prepare for school, or you have a problem with doing your homework on time. So I would want to have this system where every time you do your work on time, you get a star, and at the end of the week, we convert these stars to either a visit to a friend I trust, or to get your football, or to get this game you love. So when a child is difficult, then we use the reinforcement, positive reinforcement more than the discipline, the caning. So you would then have a program for reward system, have a program for praise, and make sure that for behaviors which, like throwing a tantrum, you have to ignore the tantrum. Because even a teenager can throw a tantrum so that they get what they want. You tell them you're not going out for this party, they throw a tantrum, they say they'll not talk to you for a week. So as a parent, you have to be firm and ignore that tantrum. They will still turn around and talk to you. So again, we have to make sure that we enforce rules, we ignore tantrums when they are trying to manipulate us, and we enforce consequences, and we enforce loss of privileges.
All right, Catherine, is there anything as a spoiled child, or again, is it the parent to blame? Because possibly they've let them away with too much to a point where now when it comes back to bite, we really cannot blame that child.
I really do not believe that we have spoiled children. We have led them to that path. I think as parents, we have allowed certain behaviors that ought to have been corrected early enough, and we've let them get away with it. And now it's become a bad negative habit that is manifesting consistently. So a spoiled child really is also a reflection on us as parents. So we need to reevaluate and see how we can correct this. I wanted to also add to what Daktari said. As a teenager, what you need to do more is continue building bridges, and in agreeing also with her, and not continue building walls, that when the teenager also keeps quiet, you also keep quiet. And I think that's also a tactic that parents also use. Continue building bridges so that we can consistently have that channel of communication.
All right. Simon Bevy, maybe you also have a chapter in the BBI, Building Bridges Initiative, to ensure that our children do not become spoiled. What are some of those suggestions maybe you'd have to ensure that that bridge is there between the child and their parent?
All right, good question, Mike. And I think BBI is something that applies across in terms of building bridges and not walls. But number one, connecting intentionally. I would say these three words: connecting intentionally. I think when there's intentionality, like sometime when you spend away, like taking your daughter or your son for dinner and just being the two of you, having a drive together, like I do once in a while with my boy, and we drive for 3 hours. We have time to talk. He gets to tell me things that he would not have told me in 15 minutes because we are intentionally spending time together and doing activities together. So creating those opportunities for intentional connection. But number two is being able to coach them patiently. I think as we have been able now to do home education, we have realized that teachers have a lot of patience, and we need to learn from them. You know, the patience to tell them, don't do that. This is where you sit. This is how you do stuff. You know, hats off to all the teachers out there and the patience they exhibit in the institutions. We need to borrow that as parents. The patience of sitting down, coaching our children, explaining to them what psychological changes are happening to them, and having conversations around all of these values. And lastly, Mike, I think as parents, many times we bring our burdens to the parenting, relationship. Your business is not doing well, or you have other things out there that have hurt you, and then you don't deal with them. So you don't come away often enough to deal with your own stress. So you show your stress through your parenting. Right. I think what we say in intentional moms and dads is that whatever you have not dealt with is going to show up in your parenting relationship. So you have issues you need to deal with. Make time to deal with them so that you don't extrapolate them and bring them on to your children in your parenting. Parenting. Be healthy, and be able to deal with your own stress so that you don't, expose it to the children.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost out of time, so I'll give you each a round of, 2 minutes to give us your closing and parting shot. And if possible, try and have it in 2 segments. 1, advice to the parents. 2, advice to our children, because I believe they also are stakeholders. I'll start with you, Dr. Mutisya.
Thank you very much. My advice to the parents is Let's spend time with our children. Let's make sure that they know our expectations, they know our rules, they know our values. Let's associate with other parents who share the same values as we do. Let's keep supervising our children, even when they are teenagers. Make sure when they are out, you still know where they are and you can supervise them. And to the children, look at the bigger picture. What is your end goal? If you're a student, what will divert you from concentrating in your studies? There's time for everything. You finish your schooling, there's a time you'll get married and have a relationship. So there's time for everything. So for the students, I would encourage them to look at their priorities. And to the society, let's be each one's keeper so that we can actually be able to correct children even who don't belong to us.
All right, Catherine Nadida, your turn on your closing remarks.
For the parents, I would want us to extrapolate 15, 20 years from now for our children, even 10 for the ones who have even lesser time, maybe 5 years. Where do we want our children to be? And what we see if we don't like it, let's take corrective actions, first with ourselves, then we seek help for our children where we are not, we're within, out of our depth. For our children, I'd like to encourage them to come to parents. And if that is not clear, then we have structures in the society like Daktari and others, like some of our institutions together with Simon Bevies, that we can help you even just navigate through life. So seek help. Don't keep quiet, both for parents and the children.
All right, thank you very much, Simon Bevy. You get the last word, your closing remarks.
Well, thank you. I think, Mike, I would refer to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 to 4, for those of you who are Christian. And this is what it basically says to the children. And to all of you children, it says, obey your parents. Get to know that we actually mean good for you. When we tell you not to watch too much TV, not to expose yourself to certain things, it's because we want the best for you. So obedience. And number 2, honor and respect. Being able to respect your parents, because as the Bible says, that's how you live long and you live right. But for the parents, what I would say from that scripture, it says, let's instruct our children. Let's spend time with them. Let's talk to them about values. Let's model that as well to them. And secondly, let's not push them to anger. Let's not frustrate them by being absent or being passive, being there but not really involved, or being abusive in any way. Let's be the kind of parents who will encourage our children to grow up, to be the men that society needs and the women that all of us would celebrate.
Thank you very much, Simon Bevy, Dr. Catherine Siango Mutisya, and Catherine Nadida for joining us on Front Row. And of course, this conversation continues. Thank you also for all of you that have participated in your way of watching or even with your messages. I'm sorry I may not have been able to read all of them, but thank you for watching. Do have yourselves a wonderful time. Do take care of yourselves and each other.